All right. Can everybody see the agenda on their screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the February Interagency Consultation Group meeting. Today, this meeting's being recorded. And if anyone is experiencing any technical difficulties, please send a message in the chat. But so far, I think I was the only one experiencing difficulties, but it's all good now. So I'm Anna Marshall. I'm an environmental planner at Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and I run the ICG meetings. And we will hear today from MDOT consultant as well as MDE about various greenhouse gas mitigation measures. So we'll have an exciting agenda today.
Okay.
But
I didn't know what bill you were talking. Your legislative fee bill.
So it's the first year.
Can everyone who's not speaking please mute?
So I've never put that in, so they're just gonna give us 600,000 basically. Start off with
Martha.
I can do it.
James, he'll talk on the calls up. I can't.
There we go. I was able to mute. Okay. All right. So before we get into the presentations, we will go through the approval of the January 2024 minutes. And they're from our January 3rd meeting. And let me pull that up real fast. I think now my panel is in the way. Here we go. Oh, no, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. January 3rd meeting minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, that's good. So can I please have a motion and a second from members to approve the minutes?
MD will make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, great. And okay, and we'll now vote on approval of the minutes, and members in support, please say aye.
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 Great, thank you. It's always easy with ICG because there's only 3 voting members. Thank you, everybody. So the minutes are approved, and we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the conformity determination of the 2025 to 2028 tip about the methodology letter. And since our last meeting, I have addressed the comments that we talked about in January. And also there's a 3rd bullet that's been added under mobile emissions development on page 4 with a comment, with an email from Sophia Cortazzo from MDOT about the new VEAP program, and any vehicles model year 2019 or newer with original ownership are exempt from emissions testing for the first 6 years of the vehicle's life. And so that'll impact the MOVES model and other emission development for conformity. So I added that in to the letter, and also, yeah, addressed other comments. Besides that, does anyone have any other comments or questions on the letter?
Anna, I'm sorry, it's Marsha.
Yeah.
Can I send you a few written comments or edits to that mobile emission development one?
Sure.
I just looked at it, and I'd just like to tweak it a little bit.
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'll try to work on it and put it in the chat.
Okay. If you want to just send me an email too, that might be easier, and then I can update it after the meeting and send it to you all before sending it to our federal partners.
Sure, I'll do that very soon.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so with the methodology letter, so if there's no other comments besides what Marcia will edit, then I think it's safe to say that we should probably do a vote of approval on it with Marcia's comments. So then once her comments are incorporated, I can send it to our federal partners either this week or early next week, so we can get the conformity process started. But before doing that, I will send it to ICG so you guys can take a look at the letter. And but so I think, let's see.
So Anna, are you saying that we would then vote over email once we have the final letter for approval with the comments incorporated?
I think that if maybe the motion could be a motion to approve the methodology letter with Marcia's comments to come, or
I see what
maybe
you're saying.
to do by email. What does everyone think?
Anna, can I speak up? This is Virginia Burke.
Yes, hi Virginia.
And of course, Sophia Cortazzo is the MDOT ICG representative, so I'm really on the side. And I will say this with complete and utter respect and appreciation for Marcia, whose knowledge is just, you know, we rely on so much. But that said, I would love to see Marcia's edits to this letter before we approve it. Only because I think, Marcia, I'm guessing you're going to address the VEEP issue, the INM and SIP implications, is that right?
Yeah, no, Virginia,
Hmm.
all I was going to do was just tweak that language. I don't like the model year 2019 in there. I just want to make it more consistent with how we've portrayed it in the past, basically exempting the newest 6 model years.
Yep.
And I will work on that while you guys are doing this. And like I said, try to get it in the chat for you to take a look at.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Marcia. Again, I absolutely am certain it'll be better after you've edited. But I think, Anna, for the sake of just sort of seeing what we're voting on, I think we would love at MDOT prefer maybe to see the letter before voting on it, maybe, you know, just see it final.
Sure, okay. So yeah, then what we'll do is put this on hold for now, and then once it's shared via email after the meeting, then we can vote on it via email for the ICG members.
And the only other thing I'll say, and I see Charles Baber is on too, all these modeling inputs, again, it's such like an intricate, I so defer to the technical experts, but there's so much intricacy, if you will, to the modeling inputs and getting them right and getting them careful and getting them specific. So that's what I'm commenting, is that our letter to the best possible explains that correctly.
Yeah, great.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so thank you, Marcia and Virginia, for your comments. And so as discussed, I will incorporate Marcia's comments and then send it to everyone to review and then vote on via email to approve this letter to be sent to federal partners. And then that should be sent out sometime next week to our federal partners. Are there any other comments or questions on this methodology letter?
Not for me.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everybody. And so we will now move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is hearing about a TIP amendment to the 2024 to 2027 TIP. And my colleague Keith Kacharik will present. But let me open that up for you, Keith, and share my screen.
maybe.
Sorry. Running a little slow today. Here we go. Let me do. Oh, goodness. Okay. All
Yeah.
yours.
Thank you, Anna. So most of you guys, or a lot of you guys, have seen this yesterday at the tech committee meeting, but I've shortened up the presentation that Aberdeen gave, and so this tip amendment is from Harford County on behalf of the city of Aberdeen. And it's for the Aberdeen train station, TOD Station Square improvements. Next slide. So the Northeast Corridor rail system is used by two Class 1 railroads, Norfolk Southern and CSX. Amtrak uses it.
I don't know if I should push it or not. I mean,
Okay, I think that's better now. Amtrak owns the Aberdeen train station and the tunnel. MDOT SHA owns the pedestrian and vehicular overpass at the train station, and MDOT MTA manages the station and the tunnel and the security and some of the parking areas. Excuse me. Amtrak has about 1,500 riders per day, and Mark has about 200 riders per day. Hartford Transit Link has about 7,500 riders monthly, and that's the busiest link stop in the county. Next slide. So just a little bit of background information here. Aberdeen Station was designated as a transit-oriented development area in 2010, and it was included in the Aberdeen Master Plan in 2012, and given a Maryland Sustainable Community designation in 2022. Next slide. The existing ugly, you can see it on the picture, the existing pedestrian overpass was built in 1982 by SHA. And when this was constructed, it created both physical and economic barriers. So the current overpass is not compliant with current ADA standards. So that's part of this project, will be to bring everything up to ADA compliance. Next slide. So the proposed improvements will remove this non-compliant overpass and replace it with an ADA compliant underpass. By constructing the underpass, it'll improve safety, security, and especially accessibility for all of, and it will connect east and west sides of US 40. So next slide. So the total cost of this project is $55 million. The requested amount on the amendment is only $5 million because the city of Aberdeen received a 2023 Federal Transit Administration grant, and that money will be used primarily for preliminary engineering, geotechnical exploration, and some environmental studies, all working towards obtaining NEPA approval. And I think that's all we have about the project. So there will be, as far as work to be done with this amendment, there's no roadway improvements being completed. I think down the road, as the whole station square gets developed, there may be some minor roadway improvements, but as far as this project is concerned right now, there's nothing in the description that would indicate that there's any kind of roadway improvements. So we're recommending this project to be exempt. And we're looking for your approval to proceed in that direction.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, let me pull up the conformity exemption sheet that I make for tip amendments, and which will show the reasoning under the conformity rule. And
I should also ask if there's any questions. I'll be happy to try to answer them. I'm sorry about that.
yeah, so BMC staff recommend that this amendment is exempt from air quality conformity requirements in accordance with section 93.126 of the conformity rule. And in the table, the reasoning is construction of new bus storage and maintenance facilities. And as Keith mentioned, there's also going to be ADA updates and to make it ADA accessible. And yeah, so we would like to know if members concur with this recommendation.
Yeah, I would say MD concurs with the exemption status that BMC is proposing.
Yeah, I'm not, I agree, I'm not seeing any issues or questions. The only question I had is that, so under the section 93.126, the that item, the construction of new bus storage and maintenance facilities, it says those that are categorically excluded under now a different section. So I just wanted to go down that path and see the justification from it's called part 771. Let me see. I think it's under, let's see, FHWA categorical exclusions. I don't see any concerns. I just wanted to kind of follow that pathway because I know sometimes it can be a little confusing to follow the each different line item on the conformity exemptions.
Right. Okay, thanks. Yeah, actually, I don't think I noticed that on the chart, so I have to look into that too. But
I don't see any issues. I just opened that part up and it says construction of new bus storage and maintenance facilities in areas used predominantly for industrial or transportation purposes where such construction is not inconsistent with existing zoning and located on or near a street with adequate capacity to handle anticipated bus or support vehicle traffic. But it's sounding like there's already the existing bus there, you know, the
That's
capacity
correct.
to handle that. Yeah.
There
so
are
I
existing
think,
buses, and this project ultimately will construct 2 new bus bays, but the infrastructure is already there for the buses.
okay, so following down that path, I think everything looks all set, and obviously the pedestrian side of things is another area that is an exempt type of project. So I'm not seeing any issues.
okay, thank you. And Brian, are you in agreement as well?
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So
Thank you.
I think the next thing for this tip, it's going to be it was voted on to go to the BRTB at yesterday's technical committee meeting, so that it's going to be voted on for approval at the BRTB meeting, which is on February 27th. Yeah, so thank you all for your support. And next up on our agenda, we have presentation, and we are actually going to be hearing from Anna Baptista from High Street Consulting on behalf of MDOT today about the new greenhouse gas performance measure. and any recent update from the state. So I will turn it over to Anna.
Thank you, Anna, and I will kick off with a presentation. So thanks for having me. I've been supporting Maryland on TPM for several years and have been working closely with Tori Lassiter, who leads MDOT SHA's Innovative Planning and Performance Division, who handles this on the greenhouse gas measure and target setting on behalf of the state. So we did just submit the report, so I'll tell you what led up, the activities that led up to it. First, I'll just touch on what the requirements of the new rule are for those who might not be as intimately familiar with it. I'll show Maryland's performance and then the approach the state ended up taking in setting that target, and then touch on the next steps for all of the folks at MPOs who will need to set targets for this as well. So first, an overview of these greenhouse gas requirements. This is part of the Federal Transportation Performance Management Program. You may be familiar with the other performance areas of safety, infrastructure condition, reliability, and congestion and emissions. This new greenhouse gas emissions measure is the newest addition. It was just passed in December. The rule was finalized in December with the first report with a very quick turnaround on February 1st. So none of us had ever done it before, though this was a part of the original rulemaking back in 2017. It got taken out, and this is it put back in. In the broad scheme of things, here's kind of the overall timeline of TPM to date. We are in the second performance period. Performance period started in 2018. That first performance period ended, and now we're right smack in the middle of the second one. Biennial reporting, the mid-period performing is coming up. That'll be in October. That will be a chance to revisit this measure along with all the other measures. So the specifics about what's required in the greenhouse gas rulemaking and measure. That initial performance report that I mentioned was due on February 1st of this year. That is a one-time report. So there will be no more February reports. Going forward, it's going to be submitted with the regular biennial reports that we're all familiar with. That's starting in 2026. For this cycle, because we're already halfway through the performance period, FHWA is only requiring a 4-year target, which equates to 2025 performance. So it's the 4th year of the performance period. The measure does apply only to the NHS, like many of the other measures. And the one requirement that is new, except it was the only one until the newest safety proposed rulemaking that you may have heard about. This measure must be declining from a reference year of 2022. All other measures, Federal Highways has been very insistent on using a data-driven approach, whether that means the performance is improving or declining. But now the targets must be declining, which equates to improving performance every year from 2022. However, just like many of the measures, there's no significant penalty for failing to achieve your targets. There will just be additional reporting that the state would have to do. So those are the landscape of main requirements that the state has been looking at. Just to revisit or to visit the metric and the measure in here. So it's going to be based on the metric of annual total tailpipe CO2 emissions on the NHS. And the measure is using that metric, but it's the percent change in that metric from 2022. So the target will be in the form of a percent reduction. The data for this metric is calculated, it's imperfect, but at least relatively simple to calculate at the state level anyway. It's based on highway motor fuel use, which is reported in table MF21 of highway statistics. And that is, of course, based on state reported fuel sales. That is multiplied by a carbon dioxide emissions factor, which is provided by Federal Highways. There's one for gasoline and one for special fuels, which is largely diesel. And then that's applied just to the NHS through a proxy of simply NHS, the share of NHS VMT over total VMT. Any questions on that before I keep going, or any of the elements that I covered? Great. So a quick look at the Maryland's statewide performance according to that metric. So here is the performance going back to 2017. Kind of in this is million metric tons of carbon dioxide on the NHS for each year. So in that 16.5 range for several years. In 2020, COVID hit, people were driving a lot less. So you can see that number goes way down. In 2021, you see that rebound, like many of our measures. 2022 does look a little different than expected. And Maryland is in conversations with federal highways about that data point, because if you see the line in yellow, that's VMT. And VMT did not see a dip in 2022 relative to 21. So that would not explain such a dramatic drop in gasoline usage. And so suffice to say, Federal Highways knows we think there's something askew in the data, and we'll work it out with them. But for now, this is the performance baseline that we're starting from, that 14.04 level. Now, the target setting approach that Maryland has decided to take for this. The state has been relying on data-driven targets for most measures. Because this one is set to be declining, and because greenhouse gas emissions reduction is a really important goal to the state, MDOT decided that we want to align our target with the existing statewide goals for climate change emissions reduction. So the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022 has two goals, one of which is a 60% reduction in 2006 emissions levels by 2031. The other goal is to be carbon neutral by 2045. We decided to go with this, closer at hand interim goal, a 60% reduction of 2006 levels by 2031 as our starting point. But subsequent analysis, I believe by one of the universities in Maryland, had highlighted 49% as the transportation specific responsibility for meeting that larger statewide goal. So then we started working with this 49% reduction by 2031 kind of level. More recently, there was this 2023 Climate Pollution Reduction Plan, did an estimate, an assessment of the reduction in greenhouse gases the state could likely see based on initiatives that are already in place. So with laws that are set to come online and initiatives, infrastructure that's going to be built, the estimate is that we could realistically expect to see a 41.9% reduction by 2031. So almost meeting that 49% goal, but not quite. Maryland decided to use that 41.9% reduction by 2031 number as a nice kind of balance between being aligned with these larger ambitious goals and a realistic assessment of where we are right now. So that we started working with that 41.9% number as our endpoint in 2031. Now the path to get there, simplest is to do a straight line path. But that's not quite realistic because there are some really big initiatives that are set to come online in later years. So for example, Maryland's Advanced Clean Cars 2 initiative is going to take effect only in 2027, which is after this performance period and this target. So we kind of took a look at the different initiatives that would be coming online in the next few years. And we kind of partitioned out the share of kind of meeting this target, that 80% would be after 2027 when these bigger initiatives are starting, and 20% would be before that over the next few years. That led us to a 4% reduction from 2022 levels by 2025, which is what this target, this 4-year target for the federal measure is set for. So Maryland's target for this greenhouse gas emissions measure, 4% reduction from 2022 levels. And you can see, we'll share just a graph of about what that looks like. Any questions on this? Or comments? Great. I hope great. I can also just touch on kind of what comes next for the MPOs in the state. So MPO requirements are similar to the state requirements with a few differences. I'm sure folks there are already on top of it, but I'll touch on them anyway. So your targets are due 180 days after the state targets, and that sets it at July 30th of this year. Again, you're only setting your 4-year performance target. You'll do those 2 and 4 years starting in 2026. Your targets also need to be declining. There is a special provision for MPOs where if there is a urbanized area in which 2 or more MPOs overlap, then those MPOs must also set, in addition to their just solo standalone MPO boundary targets, you must also set these urbanized area targets in coordination with the other MPOs. So that's going to, it's similar to, slightly different, but similar to the congestion measure. You'll coordinate with TPB on the DC area one, and they'll coordinate with you on the Baltimore urbanized area target. That's the main difference. And this is just a look at the holistic timeline specifically for MPOs for this performance period. I believe you all have finished your safety targets already, finalized those. They're due at the end of the month. Greenhouse gas coming up in July. And then the next round of safety next February, followed closely by your regular biennial targets. And this is, of course, it's the mid-period, so not setting targets, but you have the opportunity to adjust them if you want to. And I believe we have talked a little bit about support for MPOs. We do acknowledge, and Maryland understands, that this measure is a lot easier to calculate at the statewide level because it's using state reported gasoline and special fuel sales. They don't report that at the MPO boundary level. So that's going to be an added calculation wrinkle for you all. And Maryland is happy to help as much as they can. For example, providing MPO specific VMT. I think they already do that for the safety measures. So that can be applied, and then kind of exploring rolling up VMT to that specific urbanized area level to help with that. And of course, we welcome you to get in touch if there's other support you think you need to set these targets or questions you have. And again, the person to contact there is Toria Lassiter, who is the division chief of the Innovative Planning and Performance Division. And that's all I've got for y'all today.
Thank you, Anna. I guess a question I had for MPOs, would MPOs be allowed to use the targets that are set by the state? I feel like I read that somewhere.
Yes, you can set them in coordination with the state targets, or you can set your own. Similar to. But just keep in mind you will be responsible for those urbanized area specific targets that the state does not set. I mean, but you can set them to be, because it's a % reduction, that there's that benefit that it scales very nicely. And so you can simply adopt the same % reduction.
Thank you. And does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Just quick follow-up, Charles Bayer from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. So the methodology, so it was fueled by emissions by the ratio between NHS and VMT. Is that the only methodology you have a choice of, or can you use the MOVES model?
So for states, that's the methodology Federal Highways wants us to use. But because the data situation is different for MPOs, there are other alternatives, and the MOVES model is one of the options you have.
Yeah. And then just one other quick question. Is the MPO calculation also restricted to the NHS, or is it
Just the NHS.
Okay. And last question, promise. And I don't know greenhouse gas emissions enough and moves. But if I'm assuming we're only doing running emissions, if we're only looking at VMT on the NHS system?
You mean like mobile on-road mobile source emissions?
Well, so for like I said, more familiar with ozone, VOC and NOx, but there's start emissions, SOx emissions, and so forth.
Well, because it's based on gasoline usage, that would kind of all be wrapped in there.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, looks like, thank you, Anna. Yeah, looks like no one else has questions, but we appreciate you talking with us today. So our next item on the agenda is a presentation from Mark Stewart from MDE, and he will present about the Maryland's climate pollution reduction plan. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Anna. Hey, everyone. Happy to join my MDE colleagues here. Let me try and do a little screen sharing maneuver, see if I can get this presentation up here.
Great.
Are you seeing that full screen?
Yep, looks good.
Cool. Well, I'm Mark Stewart, Climate Change Program Manager at MDE, and we had the joy of needing to implement various parts of the Climate Solutions Now Act 2022, which put a slew of requirements on MDE, including developing the state's next climate plan that has to reduce the statewide greenhouse gas emissions to achieve Maryland's new statutory requirements, as you heard previously. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the main components that wound up in the plan, which we published at the end of December, just a little more than a month ago. So what is it? It's the plan to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions 60% by 2031 from 2006 levels, and set the state on a path to achieve net zero emissions by 2045. There are 2 or 3 sections of state law that dictate all of the requirements of this plan. So it meets many requirements under the law, including creating net economic benefits and job growth for Maryland. So again, I'll give you a high-level overview, but I do encourage you, if you haven't already, to check out the plan. It rings in at just under 100 pages. We tried to make it relatively light reading for everyone. So a starting point for our plan was, of course, analyzing all of the current policies that the state has that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So on the left side, you see what our emissions trajectory looks like under our current policies. This includes the Advanced Clean Cars 2 rule, the Advanced Clean Trucks rule, other measures across the electricity and buildings and industrial sectors. What you see on the right side is stacking with current policies, some new policies that are called for in the plan to achieve the statutory requirements for reducing statewide emissions. So really importantly, this plan is building on, really decades of success in improving air quality in Maryland, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing criteria pollutants. And I want to just really highlight and celebrate the work that my colleagues here at MDE and across the state government, people who've come before me have done to really reduce criteria pollutants in our state, transition us to clean energy. Maryland once had the worst air quality in the eastern half of the United States. In 2006, we had 8 coal-fired power plants. There are 2 left today. Both are slated for retirement. Countless cases of respiratory illness and hospitalizations. And last year, or 2022, was a really banner year for Maryland. It was the first time that Maryland met all national air quality standards since the Clean Air Act was established over 50 years ago. So major accomplishment. We can all literally breathe easier knowing that we're meeting those standards. And some of the greatest improvement happened in the electricity sector. So here's a graph starting at 2006, coming through to today. You can see a massive reduction in emissions. This is looking at greenhouse gas emissions in the electricity sector. Again, primarily driven by that phase out of coal and slight transition from coal to natural gas. Of course, the growth in renewables during this time helped contribute to the decreased emissions reductions here. You see projected forward are the state's current policies. So what we have are current policies like the Renewable Portfolio Standard, our participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative as continuing to be a force to drive emissions down. Under this plan, we are embracing Governor Moore's call that Maryland transition to 100% clean electricity by 2035. So that's modeled here and is part of the state's plan. The specific policy behind that, which we call a Clean Power Standard, is still to be developed and expected to be developed by the end of this year. We're really in this plan, though, shifting focus from large sources to the millions of small sources, right? And we've seen this already with our move to adopt Advanced Clean Cars 2 and Advanced Clean Trucks, really focus on electrifying the cars and trucks, millions of which that run through our state, but also in this plan, really focusing also on home heating equipment and building heating equipment, typical space heating and water heating equipment, millions of devices that today produce more greenhouse gas emissions and particulate emissions than the electricity sector. So, there's a lot of reason to look at electrifying all of these fossil fuel end uses, and electrification is very well underway already. Heat pumps started out selling gas furnaces in the United States in 2022. The best-selling car in the United States last year, and in fact globally, was an electric vehicle. And electric devices are increasingly powered by clean electricity. So as we increasingly green the grid, if you will, all of those electric devices become even less polluting on a life cycle basis. There was a major focus when the Climate Solutions Now Act was introduced, and since then around grid reliability issues. Can the grid handle all this electrification, the electrification of vehicles, buildings, and industry? And the Public Service Commission was called on to study that issue. They found, yes, that efficient electrification of buildings and vehicles will require some grid enhancements, but the grid enhancements that are needed are actually below historic investment levels, historic growth rate in the electric grid. So it was found to be rather achievable in terms of the grid requirements to handle all of this. We see that transportation decarbonization is largely driven by electrification. Again, I mentioned our signature regulations in that space, ACC2 and ACT. We also in this plan see that we're able to drive emissions lower than the current policy scenario through additional projects proposed by MDOT to further reduce VMT and help get more vehicles off the road altogether. Our charging network is poised for growth thanks to federal and state investments in this. This is a map showing current charging locations, and MDOT is busy along with MDE adding more charging stations all around the state. We also see that building decarbonization is driven by electrification. One of our current policies is called Building Energy Performance Standards, which requires buildings that are 35,000 square feet or larger to improve energy performance and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We, in this plan, are proposing new policies, including zero emission heating equipment standards, which will require typical residential sized and small commercial sized space heating, water heating equipment in the future to be to make sure that new devices installed are zero emission devices, primarily heat pump devices, and clean heat standards, which will, similar to renewable portfolio standards, clean heat standards require the deployment of clean heat measures in the building sector and obligate the fossil fuel providers to ensure that those measures are implemented on pace to achieve Maryland's GHG reduction goals. Electrification and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, of course, has a lot of benefits. Electrification creates local jobs. We're talking about going, really building by building for the buildings that are still using fossil fuel and replacing equipment. Those are jobs that can't be outsourced. We expect that we're going to grow Maryland's job base by about 27,000 jobs between now and 2031 due to just the new policies in this plan. Electricians and heat pump installers are among the job sectors that we expect to see strong growth. The plan lowers energy costs for households. The average Maryland household saves $2,600 a year by using heat pumps and driving EVs instead of using gas appliances and gas cars. The savings are even greater, up to $4,000 annually for households that switch from oil or propane to heat pumps and EVs. There's lots of federal money currently available to do all these things that we're asking Marylanders to do through this plan. 30% tax credits available for home energy audits and installing the zero emission appliances, installing solar panels, installing additional insulation and some weatherization projects. And as you all probably know, up to $7,500 off from the federal government for purchasing new EVs and $4,000 for used EVs. Many of these incentives can be stacked with other federal incentives and with state and utility sponsored incentives. Starting later this year, there will be rebates available for low, moderate, and middle income households to install specific types of electric appliances in the home. So an $8,000 rebate for heat pump, HVAC equipment. You see $4,000, up to $4,000 for electric panel upgrades, so on and so forth. So a lot of support from the federal government starting to flow through the states later this year. Our plan proposes to keep these rebates flowing to Marylanders after the federal funding runs out. So that's projected to be within just a few years from now. The federal funds will probably run out, and we intend to provide state support to keep these things rolling. Potential funding sources called for in the plan, of course, include federal grants and loans, but also some really state-focused, objectives. Green revenue bonds, cap and invest as a program concept. We already participate in a cap and invest program for our fossil fuel power plants. There's one concept that we're exploring, which would basically be expanding cap and invest to the oil and gas sector. Implementing a carbon fee is on the table. There's a bill on that this year in the General Assembly. Hazardous substance fees, fees on fuel burning vehicles. So different revenue ideas are kind of floated in the plan, but it's largely up to the General Assembly to kind of determine what path they think is best for Maryland. With the new investments, and we suggest providing approximately $1 billion additional dollars to the Maryland economy to incentivize building electrification, helping people transition to EVs, focusing on industrial opportunities for industrial decarbonization, workforce development, and more. In addition to lowering household energy costs and creating 27,000 jobs, the plan also is projected through economic studies to increase personal income by $2.5 billion across the state and grow Maryland's GDP by $5.3 billion between now and 2031. The plan delivers up to $321 million in additional health benefits compared to just our current policy scenario. And most of those health benefits occur in historically disadvantaged communities. And of course, one of the main reasons why Maryland is doing this, along with many other states and nations around the world, is the big picture prize of saving the habitability of our own planet. From an economic perspective, all of these policies together are modeled to reduce emissions by 646 million tons between now and 2050, and the global economic benefit of that measure, those actions in Maryland, is estimated to be $135 billion. So the next steps are to maximize federal funding opportunities, launch and implement new regulatory processes, including for zero emission heating equipment standards and clean heat standards, coordinate with the Maryland Commission on Climate Change, especially as it relates to funding mechanisms and investigating the fit of expanding cap and invest in Maryland, and evaluating those funding mechanisms to provide more support and information to the governor and to the General Assembly. So that is my quick overview of our climate pollution reduction plan. If there's still time remaining, happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mark. That was really awesome to hear about all the benefits and savings that Marylanders will get from electrifying. One question I had actually, one of the goals of the governor was 100% clean energy by 2035. And I was wondering, is it anticipated that that will be met mostly by electrification, or is it like coming from renewable energy like solar and wind?
Yeah, so it's a good question. The policy is still under development. It's something that MEA is the lead on, with coordination with MDE and the Power Plant Research Program under DNR. The clean energy objective, Maryland currently has a requirement through the Renewable Portfolio Standard that we achieve by 2030 approximately 50% of our electricity coming from renewables, wind, solar, hydro, and other renewable sources. The objective for a 100% clean power standard is not necessarily that it's 100% renewable, right? It's also acknowledging that we've got carbon-free electricity coming from Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant and other resources. So it acknowledges, I think, a wider array of clean energy sources than just traditional renewables. And electrification, to your question, electrification fits into it because efficient electrification, electrification could mean that you replace your furnace at home with electric resistance heaters, right? That is inefficient electrification. Don't do that. You're going to jack up your electricity bills. And if we did that, if we electrified inefficiently, we would need much more clean power generation, much greater build out of the electric grid to handle all of the inefficient electric appliances that would be plugged in. So efficient electrification is really a really integral part, actually, of achieving Maryland's clean energy goals, because as we help people, and there's still many households that use electric resistance heaters in Maryland. So as we replace electric resistance with heat pumps, as we replace furnaces and boilers and gas water heaters with heat pumps, we transition to a much more efficient electrified building sector. So these things work kind of hand in glove in terms of needing the electrification to happen efficiently while we transition more to clean energy sources.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, this is Zach Kaufman with BMC. Sorry if I missed it, but you made reference in the presentation to VMT reduction. I was curious what the assumed percentage reduction was of VMT, or what the goal was.
I'd have to look back at MDOT's plan that they attached to our plan to remember what the total was. I think that it was maybe a 20% VMT
That's what I was
reduction.
recalling as well, but yeah.
Yeah, and that was, and if any of the MDOT colleagues here can feel free to chime in if they remember the specific. It was maybe a 20% by 2045, or I'd have to look back.
Okay, that's fine. I can also. Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, anyone else? Questions for Mark? All right, thank you, Mark. That was
Sure.
really great. And both presentations will be available under meeting materials eventually on our website. So if anyone wants to follow up or anything, you can always look there. Thank you. So let me share my screen again with the agenda. Also, before we move on to item 7, I just wanted to note that Marcia put in the chat her revised text for the VEEP program. And so if everyone reviews that, so that's what I'll put into the methodology letter to update it. And then I will share it with everyone via email, where we just want to get a vote on whether you agree or not before sending it to federal partners. And all right, so item 7 is member updates. So if anyone has anything to say, we'll just kind of go down the list here, starting with BRTB. Brian.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that the UPWP public comment period opens today. It was posted on the website, and it's open till March 11th. And then the federal certification review on-site meetings for BMC are scheduled for May 1st and 2nd.
Thank you. Catherine, MDE.
I don't think I have anything specific to MDE. I will say that today EPA announced a new NAAQS for particulate matter for PM 2.5, the annual standard. Literally just happened today, so not much else to say on it, just announcing that. Marcia, if there's anything you want to add from MDE, please feel free.
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Good to know about the new NAAQS for PM 2.5. All right, Sophia, the MDOT.
I don't think I have any updates today. Thank you.
Okay. Greg, I saw you on. Do you have any updates? EPA?
Hey, that was my update. I still haven't dove into it because I am no longer really on the planning side too much. But as I get more information, sorry for the background noise, for the next call, I'll have more to give.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jasmine, FHWA, do you have any updates?
I currently do not have any updates at this time. Sound like many of them were already covered.
Great, all right. And Daniel, do you have any updates?
No, this is my first participation in one of these ICG meetings. I'm assisting Jasmine in the certification review for the BRTB, so I was just trying to get a glimpse into some of the inner workings of the ICG and what the stakeholders do. So I appreciate just getting to listen in. No updates. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for joining. And as always, if you want any more background information, there's all the past meeting materials and minutes are on our website for ICG. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. And moving on to item 8, which is other business. Does anyone have anything else to share today? Sounds like we got all caught up in member updates, so I'm imagining we're all set. I just wanted to briefly gauge your opinions. So our next scheduled meeting is March 6th, in a month from now. However, based on the conformity schedule with the TIP, the BMC staff won't have any action items for the March meeting because that's when we'll be reviewing the any projects that come in with the TIP. And so we were wondering if does ICG want to cancel the March meeting and just reconvene in April when we discuss the different TIP projects and the conformity status of the TIP projects. So let me know what you think, if that sounds good. And that meeting in April would be Wednesday, April 3rd, in person at the BMC offices.
Anna, this is Keith. Probably can do most of this by email, but there will be probably several March amendments that are going to be coming in. I know SHA has 3 or 4, so.
Okay. Yeah, we can always meet to go over the TIP amendments like we did today, or we can do it by email. Either way, yeah, just wanting to gauge ICG members' thoughts on that. And as always, we could meet if something comes up too.
I'm fine if we want to do like a shorter meeting in March to go over those amendments, and then the April meeting will be more of a full agenda, or if others prefer just email for those amendments, I'm not going to object.
Okay. Catherine or Brian, do you have any thoughts?
Well, what was the specific? I missed it.
It's okay. It
Do
was
you mind
it-
just voting on the edits?
yeah, it was for the March 6th meeting. If we want
Oh.
to cancel it and reconvene in April, just because there won't be many action items for March.
Yeah, I mean, either way, if you want to wait and we can cancel it later, or we can move it to April, that's fine. Either way works for me.
Okay. All right. So I guess depending on how many TIP amendments we get in, I'll schedule a meeting to go over the TIP amendments, but otherwise we can do it by email and reconvene in April, but I will let everyone know. All right, anyone else have questions?
Did we vote on the letter with the edits that was sent? Do we need to go ahead and vote on that? Or do we you want to do that by email later?
We could vote now if everyone had a chance to review Marcia's comment in the chat. We could vote if you would like, or I can just follow up by email later today.
I prefer via email just because I know we're running a little bit over and I want to make sure I can look through the comments without rushing into doing the approval, if you don't mind.
Great, sure, that sounds good. So yeah, I will follow up by email, Brian.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody. I think that's it. So the meeting is adjourned. I hope you all have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.